I would like to go to particulars straight to the federal project on the conservation of biological diversity and ecological tourism development within the national project called Ecology. All the resources of the Russian Federation in terms of marine mammals, including the populations of gray whales and bowhead whales, are connected with federal project on the conservation of the biological diversity and ecological tourism development. I would like to speak a little bit about the project itself. Currently, national projects is a new way of governmental authority. It is aimed to have breakthroughs in the main areas of our areas. It has 11 areas, or rather 11 projects in different areas for marine protected, clean country, integrated solid municipal waste management system, infrastructure for waste management for first and second classes of danger, fresh air, clean water, health Volga, 7 Lake Baikal, conservation of unique water objects, conservation of biological diversity and ecological tourism, forest conservation, and implementing the best available technologies. These are the projects within the National Project Ecology, and the ministry works on the 7 of these 11 projects. The goal of the federal project you can see here on the slide. We can also see that the federal project is implemented in these areas. First, the increased number of the MPAs and decreasing effectiveness of managing these MPAs of the federal status. It is planned to have at least 24 new federal protected areas and increasing the area of these MPAs by 5 million hectares. Second area is connected with the restoration and replenishment of rare species. The planned result is conservation and increased abundance of rare species, where the index of abundance will be at least 1. Third area is development of national tourism in national parks, promoting tourist activities both in Russia and in other countries. The planned result is to increase the number of visitors to the MPAs, or rather to protected areas. Within the framework of the federal project for the conservation of biological diversity and ecological tourism, there are 3 ways. First one is to create a working group on threatened species. This working group was created. In 2019, there was a decree by Ministry of Nature of the Russian Federation, and this working group was established to work on threatened species, and these species required the first important measures to reintroduce them into the nature. 7 experts are part of this working group. In 2019, Ministry of Nature approved a list of threatened species of the federal project, which are very important to reintroduced. Originally, it had 11 priority species. In 2020, this list was amended, and now the list is expanded by bowhead whale and Okhotsk sea whale. Different strategies for re-implementation, for restoration are being developed, roadmaps are being developed for the species, which have to improve the abundance, also have to develop the methodology, taking into account the problems for reintroducing of natural species. There is a need to develop specific methodology to work with these specific animals, or rather species in general. It's important to note that most of these projects were approved within the roadmap, and we have 10 roadmaps in total for different species. There are species which do not have a roadmap approved, but they are being prepared right now. Within the federal project, a new list of red listed species was approved. In 2019, within the federal project, a working group was created to work on business and conservation of biodiversity. It has 23 business companies, participants, and participants are the key non-governmental organizations. They work on biodiversity, on working with business companies, and on effective solution for biodiversity, including attracting additional funds. Within this initiative, there is scientific, methodological, informational support of the campaign to create special programs on conservation of biodiversity. The Ministry of Nature has created special methodology on how this roadmap should be accomplished. Within the initiative of the business diversity, there are 10 business companies and 10 initiatives, 5 of them with commercial companies like Rosneft, and Rosneft has to provide the assessment of one of the priority species, polar bear. It also has to provide support working with other endangered and rare species. Second company is Zarubezhneft. This initiative has to provide additional measures to conserve sterk, as well as additional programs to save this bird. Third initiative is with Lukoil. It has to work and protect. It has to work and protect saiga antelope. VTB has to work with reintroducing leopards, and Russian Railways also has this initiative on one of the rare species. Other programs to reintroduce rare species is planned. Ministry of Nature works on creating more initiatives of this kind. The next steps are establishment of the whale expert section within the framework of the working group, development of draft stages, or rather draft strategies for the conservation of western grey whale and bowhead whale. There is a special dedicated group for cetaceans, which has already been created, and this work will be dedicated to work with these species. Different development of roadmaps based on these strategies were approved. Conclusion of agreements with commercial companies and non-commercial organizations on interaction for the strategies and roadmaps implementation. And implementation of activities provided by roadmaps within the federal projects. On the activity with business companies. Now I would like to say a few words about the territorial and water area protection and conservation. Currently, in Russia, we have more than 13,000 highly protected areas, which cover 13% of territory, land territory of the Russian Federation. Besides that, waters, all these specially protected areas take 2.2% of the area of the waters, seas, and economical zone of the Russian Federation. We had 30 specially protected areas, which include water areas. They have 17 reserves, 6 national parks, and 7 sanctuaries, so to say. Within the federal project, it was planned to create 24 specially protected areas. One of the sanctuaries, or zakaznik in Russian, it is planned to create in the northern part of the Russian Federation, in Laptev Sea. Many marine protected areas are created for marine mammals, including whales. Preservation of Okhotsk or Sea of Okhotsk gray whale is connected with different islands around that area, including Berengia Island, for example. Preservation of bowhead whale works with Komandorsky Island, national parks, Berengia, Shantarsky Islands, Malay Kurili, South Kamchatka, and others. And I would like to specify a little bit these territories which implement or provide a lot for this protection. Kronotsky Zapovednik or Kronotsky Reserve. It has 24 species of marine mammals, including threatened species. The coastline has rookeries of sea otters. Humpbacks are also present there. Balenidae, killer whales, orcas, porpoise, and other protected marine animals inhabit this territory. Vrangila Island works primarily with polar bear. The natural reserve has dens for polar bears where they give birth to cubs, but also this natural reserve provides protection for walruses, for Arctic seals. It also helps other marine mammals for their migration paths, like gray whales. Berengia National Park is a wide national park. It's more than 1 million hectares in area. It also has Itigrand Island, which is famous for whale lane. It's an ancient monument which was built about 500 years ago. Arakan Chichin Island has one of the most important walrus holdouts for the Chukotka Peninsula. There is a wide variety of marine mammals, including ringed seal, bearded seal, Arctic fox, wolverine, wolf, brown bears, but it also has marine mammals, as I said, ringed seals, bearded seals, walrus, sei whales, humpback whales, and so on. All of them form their holdouts on the territory of the national park. The waters also contain humpback whales, bowhead whales, gray whales, beluga whales, and so on. Shantarsky Ostrova National Park. Shantarsky Islands have these islands and the area around them for 15,000 hectares area. It has 11 species of whales and 5 species of pinnipeds. It's most famous for its whales. It has gray whales, beluga whales, killer whales, ringed seals, sea lions, and others. And it is planned that by 2024, many of these areas will be protected. We'll have additional protection and additional measures for conservation. We plan to expand its area. And it is important to note that Novosibirsky Islands is also a very important natural reserve. Its area is more than 3 million hectares. And in general, in Russia, there are a lot of marine aquatic territories or aquatic areas which are part of the MPAs, which are very, very big in terms of area For example, Russian Arctica National Park has more than 6.5 million hectares. Novosibirsky Islands is almost 5 million hectares. Komodorsky Islands, 3.5 hectares. Wrangel Island is 1.4 million hectares, and others are also very, very big. And we plan that this kind of network of MPAs will significantly improve the quality of conservation of marine mammals. At the same time, after analyzing this concept, the implementation of which was concluded in 2019, the ministry has decided that it is important to create a new strategic document for the planning, for the roadmap, which should cover the entire industry. And now this kind of document has been prepared. It's a systematic document on the whole protection of these areas. It has some key developments, both for federal protected areas and for the whole system in general, including regional and local ones. The existing threats have been analyzed and difficulties which the system will face by 2030. Within the framework which we will have to implement the roadmap, it is planned to add new territories by 2030. There will be two groups of these kind of plans. First is the federal plans, which will be approved by the government of the Russian Federation. And second group is the implementation plans, which will be decided by the specific regions of the Russian Federation, of the constituents of the Russian Federation. And these constituents will work on these plans at the local level. These are main results, these are main plans on implementing of the federal project for conservation and biodiversity. Thank you for your attention, and I am ready to take your questions.
All right, great, Olga. Thank you for the great presentation. And do we have any questions from the audience? Looks like we have two questions. The first is Dmitry Glazov.
Good day, Olga. Thank you for your presentation. My question is, I'm not sure if you are the person to ask to, but the federal project doesn't have governmental funding, which you mentioned. You said the funding goes from different ways, from private companies. Maybe first question, why don't we have the federal government funding, which is very important for protection and conservation biodiversity? And second point, will the government actually fund this area from the federal budget? Well, thank you for the question, Dmitry. As we understand, unfortunately, it doesn't always happen that nature conservation receives the funding which it really needs to solve the problems it has to solve. So unfortunately, the Ministry of Finance, when Ministry of Nature filed applications for additional funding for this federal project, did not receive an approval. But we still hope. Now we prepare a list of activities which will have, we change the federal project, and some activities will be deemed non-budget, and then we plan to transfer them to budget ones. So these activities, these events which will have governmental funding, This is the first point. We plan that the key point for environmental protection will be reintroduction of rare species, and it will be funded by the government. At the same time, we understand that the major part of this federal project implementation is played by our agencies, which control these specially protected areas. And we understand that the funds which go from the federal budget are a little bit different one. But still, we believe that there will be an additional funding for these kind of agencies which control the specially protected areas which are within the part of the federal project. So we try to get additional funding for these agencies so that some of the activities could be implemented right now without waiting for the financing or for the funding within the federal project in several months or maybe years. We also believe that this kind of instrument allows to have additional financing, not only funding. We could work with other companies. We believe it's a very progressive tool, maybe even an innovative one, because in reality, for a company to develop its social and ecological responsibility, what do you have to do in practice? You have to provide this kind of activity. And I already mentioned 23 companies which really want to help. So that's why we hope that this financing will be increasing year to year. But thank you for a question.
Thank you, Dmitry and Olga. Maria, do you have a question?
Olga, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting to listen to you, and I would like to specify one thing. Well, first of all, there are a lot of natural reserves in the Arctic with water areas. Do we have special mechanisms in Russia which do not have islands as their parts, maybe coastline, can be protected or not? Second question, I'm not sure if you listened to Vladimir Burkanov's presentation yesterday, who covered the whole situation on marine mammal protection, and he said that we do not have enough, we don't really fully understand the problem in our country for the marine mammals protection. So that's why I wanted to ask you, you present or rather represent Russian Federation at the international level, working with international organizations. Can you comment on the Russian stand on protected areas which are not part of the Russian Federation? So for the international cooperation. Thank you, Maria, for your question. It's a very important one. And I think it will be interesting for everyone to listen to the answer. Well, first of all, I was not able to listen to Vladimir Burkanov's presentation yesterday. I'm sure that it's very interesting. I will listen to it once I have free time, but right now I cannot comment on it. Regarding the MPAs, Russian legislation is not that developed, so we can speak about the specific marine areas. We have certain movements, we have certain developments which work with the systems on these protected areas, which should be interconnected with land and non-land protected areas. I think this document is the first one to separate these areas. So this opportunity to create additional different areas, land areas and water areas, now we have these capabilities. We did not have enough practice before. We worked with marine mammals protection, but unfortunately they were not approved in the Russian Federation. We hope that we'll be able to protect this legislation, but Right now, the situation is this kind of territorial protection is not within the legislation, so to say. I believe that in some decrees, we have to have special protected areas for marine mammals. Maybe we should go into fisheries law and work on this law. And why don't we include the marine protected areas for marine mammals? Because this is marine resources which the fishery agency is responsible for. So we have these ideas, but we need to work on them. Regarding your second question, I think it will be really difficult without land territories. We don't have pure marine protected areas, but we have Far East protected area. We have Novosibirsky Islands protected areas, which has great water areas, which is more than 50% in waters. More than 50% of that natural reserve is waters. But for now, in Russia, the practice is as follows. We work within the jurisdiction on the economical zone and within the terrestrial seas. Russia is not ready to go beyond the jurisdiction. It's not questions of biodiversity convention. These are different matters. First, we need the states to come to a resolution how it would happen on the international level. But I agree that this is a very important question. It's been going on for 20, 30 years, but unfortunately the situation is not resolved, has not been resolved yet. But still, I mentioned the development strategy for the specially protected areas, and as a priority, not just territories, but a network of territories, a network of specially protected areas. This kind of strategy has a number of ecosystems. It has an ecosystemic approach to the most vulnerable ecosystems or to the most vulnerable territories and water areas. And first of all, we speak about marine protected areas, Arctic protected areas, and land ones, including the mountain ranges and steppes, and of course the forest ones. So in general, Russia is ready to go forward to protect, to have fully marine protected areas, complete marine protected areas, but will it be within the jurisdiction of the Russian Federation or we will go outside? I think it doesn't depend on the Russia itself, but rather on the international cooperation within the other convention.
Thanks for the question, Maria. I think we are getting ready to head into a break, but we might have just enough time for one last question. Vladimir Bakhanov, your hand has been up for a while.
Thank you, Olga, for your very interesting presentation. I'm really concerned with the situation of the lack of the funding for marine mammals protection, and you noted that you applied several times to Ministry of Finance, but the funds have not been allocated. Maybe we should address to the Ministry of Finance, to the Prime Minister directly from the conference so that we can receive the funding. What's your take on it? Thank you for your proposal. You know, I like different proposals, good ones, bad ones. We need to use all the opportunities, and we also have to use this opportunity. But the point is, taking into account the statesman position, we know how we can get the money, and that's the way the Ministry of Nature goes. First, we have to deem these events or deem these activities as activities, but non-budget activities, and then transfer them to budget activities. So it's a little bit complicated, but currently this is the only way how our country operates. We live in a country, we live in a time when a lot of money is spent on for absolutely different reasons. So saying that funds will be allocated to protect and conserve rare and protected species, well, we can hope, but the probability is quite low. We still have to do it, and we have to show that it's impossible to implement this kind of activities without any funding. And we cannot fully rely on financing from other companies. We do have this money from other companies, from IMF, from WWF, from other organizations, from NGOs. The Council on Marine Mammals gets resources basically in a magical way. It's very important for marine mammals in Russia. But taking into account the situation as a whole, even if we get some money, it will not be enough to fulfill all the needs, to fulfill all the goals we have to do. So we have to go in this combined way. We have to work towards funding from the government, but we also have to get financing from the companies. And I really hope that there are a lot of commercial companies which are ready to provide financing for monitoring, for conservation, Sakhalin Energy, for example. This company was really glad to work with the Sea of Okhotsk gray whale. They were really glad that this species became listed because they wanted it to be listed in this priority list. So answering your question, yes, it would be reasonable to send a letter to the government, to the Prime Minister, Mikhail Mishustin, on behalf of this conference. It is true, but still we have to do what we have to do, including the statement. Thank you. Thank you for your answer.